So this is a follow-up Battletech question in the comments. I love infantry in Battletech. I mean, I love mechs. This is the problem. I love mechs. I love heavy tanks. I love infantry. I love all three of them on there. But what I love about infantry is this idea of infantry standing over the broken, smashed, destroyed remains of a mech. Just kind of, raising their weapons in defiance to this military technology, and this idea in the inner sphere of mech warriors being elite, of mech warriors being knights of the future, and the smugness that comes with that. Mech warriors thinking that they're brave. Mech warriors are not brave. Infantry are brave on there. Not to mention, on the side note, that's the narrative that I see in my mind, but the side note of the lulls when you get taken out by infantry. In a game of Inner Sphere versus Clan, I had some infantry that were able to make it up on top of a hill. So they've got good line of sight. They've got range. They were LRM infantry, long-range infantry, missiles on there. Not really doing a ton of damage. And against Clanners, against the Vulture, there was... I got it in a couple of lucky shots with my awesome. Critted the Vulture on there and did enough damage that they had to be careful. Opened it up on there. Of course, my awesome then just got obliterated and destroyed, but it took a lot of return fire from other mechs. My infantry fired back and were just in range. And of course, anytime you roll legendary in Battletech, legendary things are going to happen. But legendary infantry are still legendary. And I just hit that critical spot, that torso spot, took out the gyro, blew out the engine, and the Vulture's just down on the ground, like thrashing around like Ed 209, and it was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome on there. But getting away from my tales of glory, the question was, and this is building on the APC tactics video from a couple of weeks back that I posted to my channel. It's under the Battletech archive playlist there. How are we going to get this infantry into the fight on there? Because other than a fixed defensive position, infantry need a ride, or they need some sort of jetpack on there. The problem with jump infantry is you have speed for lower battle value, and they have the resiliency of infantry if they can utilize buildings and terrain and cover, but you don't have the raw numbers to really throw out a lot of damage, and you really can't take that much return fire. And you're really not moving that fast. 3 spaces for jump versus 1 hex, or I should say hexes. Hexes for ground infantry on there. That's not to say you wouldn't run them. I mean, I do run them too if I'm starved for battle value. But for the most part, I need to build in battle value for the delivery system. The only time I take infantry on foot is if there is going to be a defensive position on there, meaning I'm a defender. Or I know based on the mission parameters, or ahead of time, I plan where I'm going to hit and pull back and try to pull my opponent in. Then I will set up a literal wasp's nest, or I should say ant's nest of infantry, but they're going to be very, very static on there. In my mind, I have 2 ways of delivery. One that's kind of the narrative, that fits the narrative, urban pacification and defense force. My urban mech, the Duke of Death, is in there. I use goblins on there. And goblins don't have the carrying capacity. They don't have so much the speed for there. I mean, they're faster as a vehicle. They're fast. They're going to take the infantry along. But I find goblins work really, really well city fight on there, because they can get up there just fast enough. They've got good armor. I mean, essentially, it's a slightly stripped-down Bulldog tank. And the Bulldog's a pretty decent tank on there for the battle value and capacity. And the machine guns, the large laser of the Goblin means once I drop my infantry off, if there's other infantry, I might not want to engage my infantry versus your infantry. I want to... and especially if I'm dealing with short-range missile infantry or long-range missile infantry that I have, I probably want to throw those against your mech or some vehicles. I don't want to go infantry to infantry. This is where the Goblin can turn the machine guns on there and deal with that. If there's no infantry around, the large laser on the turret with the infantry makes a nice little fire base on there. And certainly a large laser, it's only one. There's no redundancy in there. It's either hit or miss. It's not like I have two, so if I miss with one, I'll probably hit with the other. 8 points of damage is pretty decent, but it doesn't quite get the attention of, say, a PPC or an LRM-20, but it's good. It works in there. But I would say if we're looking for total effectiveness and total tactics, Karnov. They're really, really cheap. They have a lot of capacity. They're fast. And the ability with the altitude means, and the speed, for the most part, you can fly above and high enough up to not take any return ground fire on there. Now, the converse of that, of course, is if there's dedicated air support and you're just running Karnovs, they're going to tear through that on there because they're going to be able to get close enough to try to nullify your speed, the hexes that you move, and they'll be able to match your elevation, and they probably have some guns on there that'll take you out on there. But then you might bring in some of your own. The advantage of the Karnov is it moves so fast for what it holds and the cheap battle value. You can dump heaps of infantry on key locations, either choke points where they're going to get in, a large forest in the center of the gaming table. You usually want to control the center. If I get tons of infantry up there, that's going to force you to dig them out. That's going to slow you down a little bit. That buys me time to get my mechs up and deal with that. If there's mission parameters, we see this with a deployment model called deployment lockdown. I've got my mechs on my side of the table, my toys. You've got your mechs and toys on your side of the table, and we're converging to the center, or we're converging up the flank, or whatever the mission's going to be. If I can drop my infantry 2 turns, I can be in your deployment zone and just mass drop infantry. I'm not really going to inflict that much damage, although it's Battletech, I might get lucky on there. You are going to be able to dig them out, but if I can force you to dig them out and spend 2, 3, 4 game turns and keep back some vehicles, or keep back 1 or 2 mechs, or keep back your own infantry for the battle value, that's a massive win on there. I mean, that alone is worth the price of admission. And then the Karnov, the Karnov could also be used to drop them off, especially if it's city fight, key buildings, city tech, to act as spotters, spotting units. Infantry spot perfectly. Tag them, hit them with the indirect fire, good to go on there. And then lastly, the Karnov, of course, can then just start doing circles around the table and act as a spotter from there. There's also the fun, the real lulls of it. Running, I think a minimum you want to run 2 Karnovs in a 4 to 6K battle value game. I know there's so many toys, there's so much amazing stuff, you want to play it all. But 2 Karnovs packed with infantry is good. One's going to get through, 2 are probably going to get through. That turns an annoyance into tactically something they need to deal with. But another idea is to get a 3rd Karnov, and it might be the actual model, it might be a proxy model. There's a lot of interesting, on a side note, there's a lot of interesting lower tech level helicopters, gunships, transports, and other wargaming lines that look really good and perfectly fit the Battletech look of that. Because we're not talking mechs, we're talking conventional arms on there and conventional weapon systems, ICEs and other things like that are powering this. You can pull stuff in, modernish type miniatures, and it works. 3 Karnovs means you run 2 full of infantry, and you run the 3rd with the autocannon 20. And you just open up those infantry doors, out comes this massive, massive cannon, and you just do a major run on there. I find that type of insertion, the 3 Karnovs. Now, I would let my opponent know ahead of time which one has the autocannon 20. I think that's good sportsmanship. Whether you want to call it in the narrative, you picked up on some signature, or you got some recon, or you saw the doors open, or the configuration's a little different. That's okay. That's fair. Maybe you play with hidden rules. But I find if I'm going to be really, really aggressive with my infantry and with the Karnovs, and I'm going to go into your deployment zone, or I'm going to go into some area that's, you're over the target when you're taking fire, then I can leverage that AC-20 to punch a hole, potentially punch a hole on there, it's going to let my infantry make it in. That Karnov with the AC-20 is probably not going to make a second pass on there. There's a good chance I'm going to miss on there because it's only one shot. Even with me moving, I'm going to get point blank. I'm going to get one hex away. But like the Mech Buster, if I hit, you're in a lot of trouble. Now, why wouldn't I take a Mech Buster over a Karnov? That's a matter of opinion. You know, the Karnov I could use as a third one for infantry, or I could play it as one of the variants. I would also definitely look into a Mech Buster and put that in with the two Karnovs, pushing that forward. I mean, that works. And the speed of the Mech Buster and the armor, you'll probably get a second pass on there. I'm going to try and take it away from you, take your toys away, but you'll probably get a second pass. So aggressively speaking, if you were starting your collection out, first you fill out the infantry because you are going to play sometimes defensive. You are going to play sometimes some jump infantry on there. Absolutely. Fill that out because they're going to fill up your vehicles wherever you go. Then from there, the next purchase, I would say absolutely Karnovs on there. Maybe something to accompany it in. And then from there, I would look at the Bulldogs. There are some other, on a side note, some other APCs. I'm spacing on the names of them right now. There's one with machine guns, and it's got some armor on it, some decent armor. The idea, it's a infantry fighting vehicle. I find for the battle value and the low amount of armor that it has, I'd rather just pay that battle value tax and upgrade to a Goblin on there because they are a little bit hard to dislodge. They've got some bite. Again, not quite the Bulldog, but close enough. You could also, on a side note, you could easily proxy a Goblin and say, okay, for this game, my three Goblins, they're going to be three Bulldogs on there. So you get a little bit more out of your collection pushing it that way. But yes, Battletech, I love those mechs. I love those tanks. But once you get involved in infantry and you see the glory of infantry and how they work, I guarantee you, especially when you take out some mechs and you swarm some mechs and you hot drop infantry on mechs and you drop them on the clanners and you realize the clanners don't have any arms or hands, so they can't bat them off, so the clan mechs are throwing themselves on the ground and rolling around to try and get you off. There's a lot of lulls moments in there and a lot of great fun stuff to explore with infantry, adding it to your collection sooner rather than later.